Good morning, everybody. My name is Gareth Tucker. I'm the operational head and also the director of the Somerset College Cambridge program here at Somerset College. And I'm just going to quickly take you through a little bit of information regarding our Cambridge program and how we run it here in South Africa here at Somerset College. Do you know that we've got a number of families who are joining us from here in Somerset West, also from other parts of South Africa. And then we've also got families from the UK and a number of other countries. So I'm going to try and cover what we do from a high level point of view. And then the way this works afterwards, if you're interested in pursuing the Cambridge program here at Somerset College, I then set up individual meetings with each family. Because what you'll find out during this meeting this morning is that the program is very, very flexible. It does allow for a number of different options, and it's difficult to go through all of them during this meeting. Right, so let's just kick on then, and we'll go to the next page, if it will move for me. Right. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, Somerset College was founded in 1997, so we're not very old. We're only turning 30 in 2 years' time, and we are an independent co-educational school situated in the Western Cape in the Winelands, quite close to Cape Town, and 15-20 minutes away from Cape Town International Airport. We're actually an IEB school, which not to be confused with IB, is not International Baccalaureate. It stands for the Independent Education Board, or Independent Examination Board rather. And that is a South African curriculum, which is accepted in various parts of the world, but it is not the IB as such. Right, we run that from grade 000 all the way to matric, which is our grade 12, and then we run the Cambridge A-level program in parallel to our grade 11 and grade 12, which I'll show you now as well. We do have boarding at the school, and we've got room for 126 to 128 students, half, both boys and girls, so 2 separate houses, 1 boys' house, 1 girls' house, and so that is available also obviously to students who join the Cambridge program. Right, moving along. What we do here is, just to show you, we do something called Cambridge International. That's the curriculum we follow. There are different ways in which you can get your A-level qualification, but so you can do it through edXL, you can do it through all sorts of other things, but we offer Cambridge International, right? So more commonly known as CIE, and but this does get you to an A-level, the advanced level qualification, which is accepted around the world. Right, just to show you, just to have a quick little brag, we've had some students. We've been running this program now for 10, almost 11 years. This is our 11th year, and we've had some students do very, very well. And these are just some indications of some of the students who have achieved a number of A's and A stars in their A levels going forward. And not only that, we've had a number of students who have been awarded Cambridge Outstanding Learner Awards, which means that they come either first in the world or first in the country. And you can see we've had a number of top in world awards, the latest being Kate Rankin, who came top in the world in AS English language, and then also Zoe was top in country in A-level biology. But we've had a number of those throughout the 10, 11 year history that we've been doing this. Right. Okay, so let's take you to what we do. And if you have a look at that little diagram there, you will see that we have grade 8, grade 9, grade 10, which runs as IEB. So those are IEB grades. And normally a 14-year-old student will be in grade 8, a 15 in grade 9, 16 in grade 10. At the end of grade 10, our students here, our local students, get to choose, are they going to follow the IEB curriculum and end up with a grade 12 NSC. So the NSC is the National Senior Certificate, which is the South African Matric School Leaving Certificate. We do not have a school leaving certificate at the end of grade 10, right? So South Africa's only got 1 point at which you can exit school with a certificate, and that is grade 12. And we write the IEB examinations, which gives the student an NSC. There's nothing wrong with the IEB program. And I'll tell you, both my children carried on and did the IEB. Okay, and they're doing very, very well at university at the moment. So you don't have to do Cambridge. The IEB is perfectly suitable. Right. However, students at the end of grade 10 can choose to do the Cambridge program, and they follow the Cambridge AS and A level. I'll talk to you more about what these two things are now, but we run the AS parallel to grade 11, and the A level runs parallel to grade 12. When I say parallel, it means in this, we treat AS students the same as we would treat grade 11 students, and we treat my A-level students the same as we would treat grade 12 students. So the A-level students are the end of school. That's the school leaving year for us in Cambridge. Right. We do accept students from outside the school, coming from all around the world, and we got students from 8 or 9 different countries currently in the Cambridge program, from places as far as America, the UK, China, Singapore, Russia, you name it, from all over Central Africa. We've got students from a number of different countries. Right. And they come to us either having done a GCSE or an IGCSE, which is the international version of that. We've also got students who have done various French or German qualifications, which are GCSE or grade 10 equivalent. And then they come and they join us in the AS and then A level. Right. Remember that the Cambridge International Examinations set exams for both AS and A level, whereas the IB exams are only external exams at the end of grade 12. But I'll talk a little bit more about the exams in the Cambridge program now. Right. So we offer what is known as a staged route. And what that means is, well, let me explain how it works in the UK or something like that. So in the UK, and anybody on the call from the UK can help me out here if I go wrong. But in the UK, you finish with a GCSE or an IGCSE or some kind of equivalent. That is a school leaving year. In other words, students can leave school when they finish their GCSEs or IGCSEs and go to colleges or technicons or work or whatever they want to do. If they want to go to university, they then need to go to an A-level college, the advanced level. So the advanced level is seen as the course required to get into university. And in the UK, it generally lasts for 2 years. I know there are some schools that offer AS, but the majority of schools in the UK only offer the A level, which runs over 2 years, and the students tend to write all the exams at the end of the 2-year session. So if, for example, you do A level English, you would write 4 exams, and you would write all 4 exams at the end of the 2-year period. Right, so what we do is we offer a staged route. Staged route means you split your exams. So you write some exams at the end of the first year and the remaining exams at the end of the second year. So I spoke briefly now about English. So to get an A-level qualification in English, you need to write 4 exams. With our staged route, you would write the first 2 exams at the end of the first year, and then the next 2 exams at the end of the second year. And they add those 2 results to give you an A-level qualification. Right, so that's what a staged route means, is that we break it up into 2 years. The first year is called AS, stands for Advanced Subsidiary. The second year, more fondly known as A2, but completing the second year and writing these exams at the end then give you a combination which will give you an A level in those subjects that you complete at that level. Right, so interestingly, we write exams in October, November, being a Southern Hemisphere school. I know that the majority of people coming from the UK would write or from the Northern Hemisphere, would write their exams in the May-June series. We also offer a May-June series, but our students tend to write the October, November exams. Right, so in this first year, which if we're talking now and you're looking for your child to join the Cambridge program next year, we're talking 2026, obviously. They will start in January, generally start with 4 or 5 AS subjects. We teach through until the end of the 3rd term. The 4th term is then from October and November. That's where we write exams, and these are external exams. They are set and marked by Cambridge. And so students will write those exams. At the end of that, in the last few weeks of this first year, we start with our A-level teaching. And then the students go into A-level, and they generally drop down to 3, possibly 4 subjects. I have had some students do 5 subjects at A-level. which is quite a heavy load, but the general number of subjects required at A level is 3. And that's because most universities around the world would expect 3 A levels. Right. So just I spoke about what happens in the UK with one doing this over 2 years. What a lot of schools do is students would start with 3 subjects and they write 3 subjects all the way through for 2 years, and they write the exams just in those 3 subjects. There are some schools that may start them off with 4, and then they allow them to drop 1, or they write 4 A levels all the way through. Now, the reason why we have 4 or 5 subjects here is because we need to make sure, or what I try and do is make sure that every student who comes through our Cambridge program has as many options open as possible. And those options mean being able to study here in South Africa, which means we need to jump through a few hoops and make sure we cover a few bases in terms of subject choices. To go study over in the UK, which means we need to make sure they have the subjects in place for that, but also to go study in Europe or America. America's generally okay. We need to look at what subjects they're going to be doing. But if you want to go study in Europe, you normally have to show at least 6 subjects on the Cambridge program. So if you've done GCSEs, then that makes life a lot easier. But if you're coming into the Cambridge program from grade 10, then that makes life a little bit more difficult, because they don't qualify grade 10 and Cambridge, that they don't look at the combination of the two. Right, so the South African grade 10 and a Cambridge qualification are not viewed by universities as one thing. They will look only at the Cambridge qualifications. And that means students who are looking to do Cambridge who have done grade 10, when we have the individual meetings, I will explain that to you, and we will try and put things in place to make sure you have the correct subject combinations, number of subjects. So that's why we have this 4, 5 subjects at AS. Now that is what makes this an accelerated program. I just want to point that out right now. A lot of students who I've spoken to over the years go, oh, I've only got to do 3 subjects in the second year. It must be easy. It is not easy. Okay, it is not an easy option. This is not the option to take if you're looking for something easier to finish school. Okay, it is more rigorous than doing the A level in the UK. And the reason for that is that we write these exams here. In the UK, they would continue teaching during this time, which means we've got less teaching time, which means that it is an accelerated program because we've got to teach the same amount of work in a shorter period of time. Okay, and generally students would take more subjects. So the AS year is a high pressure year, and it's one where students really get pushed to the limit, and then they fully prepared for A level, and then they wax it in A level as well. Okay, so it's not an option for students who are looking for an easier option. That's what I'm going to say up front. Right, so that's the way we work. Obviously, when we have individual meetings with families, then I will go through the subject choices and the number of subjects that you're doing and taking, and it does depend on prior education. So if somebody comes in with a GCSE or IGCSE, that's one thing. If they come into us with a grade 10, that's something different, and every student will get different advice depending on their background and where they want to go. So we try and make sure that we have everything in place for those students to get to where they want to be. And there are so many options, and it is so flexible. And our program does allow for that, obviously with some restrictions. We can't go totally crazy. But yeah, so I would give advice to each family coming in one-on-one, but this is the basic structure. Right, so Cambridge Classroom. First of all, Cambridge classes are taught totally separately from IEB classes. So as I mentioned in the beginning, we are an IEB school. We have this Cambridge parallel program that runs next to it. At no point are Cambridge students taught in the same class as IEB students. They're doing a different curriculum. They are taught differently. Sometimes the work is completely different. The actual topics are different. Okay, so we don't join them together. So a Cambridge student may be very good friends with an IEB student, and at the end of break, the IEB student will go to maths and the Cambridge student may go to physics or something like that. They're taught in the same time. So the classes, the lesson times are the same. The break times are the same. The chapel times, everything else is the same. They're just taught in different classes by different teachers. And The only difference is that in Cambridge, because of the nature of the number of lessons we have, they actually run into a 9th lesson, which runs from 2:30 to 3:15. Anybody who's currently in the school would know that we've finished teaching at 2:30 at the moment, so we have 8 lessons a day. The Cambridge students would have 9. Right, so that then adds a little bit to that as well. Our subjects are taught by trained, experienced teachers. Yeah, we've been running this program for some time now, and I've been very lucky to have a consistent group of teachers who are teaching, and they are trained and they've experienced and they know what they are doing, and it's very nice for us to have that. Students have to demonstrate understanding, core knowledge of the subject, and well, that goes without saying. That's required in IB as well. Okay, they're going to be asked to construct arguments, evaluate evidence, exactly the same as we would do in IB. The difference is where maybe from IB, students are expected to work independently and collaborate a lot more. Okay, so what happens in Cambridge, when I say work independently, that doesn't mean self-study. It just means that the curriculum is so deep that what we discuss in class is often not enough. So students have to be prepared to go do extra reading after school, after class, to get a better understanding or a deeper understanding of what they're doing. So a student who comes into class, listens in class, walks out and forgets about anything beyond that point, they're really going to struggle. They have to be interested in what they're doing, and they have to be motivated so that they are prepared to read up on those topics. So for example, I teach AS physics. I expect my students to go home in the afternoons and spend 15-20 minutes reading up on what we've done. And there's so much information out there. They can just go Google, they can chat GPT, they can do whatever they want, but they have to read up and get a better understanding of what they are discussing in class at that time. And then they're learning to collaborate. The way the Cambridge timetable works, because as I mentioned just now, we have a 9-lesson timetable and students are taking 4, 5, sometimes even 6 subjects. And the AS program, it means that they have free lessons. When I say free lessons, I mean not in a class. Doesn't mean that they're free and they can sit under a tree and watch the clouds go by. Those lesson times are there for students to do the research, to work in teams, to collaborate with each other and try and work with each other to enhance their understanding of what they're doing. So our Cambridge students spend a lot of time in the library, in the computer rooms, things like that, either working together or doing a lot of reading or research on what they're doing. Again, depending on the subjects that they're taking. Some subjects require more research, others need more reading just for understanding as well. Right, then because we're doing an international curriculum, obviously they're going to be developing more of an international outlook and become more confident global citizens. Well, that's what we try. Right, the difference between IB and Cambridge, I've mentioned a little bit, but at the end of the day, the ethos is the same. I mean, the goal is the same. We're trying to produce students who are ready and prepared to go study further, to go do something bigger beyond school. Okay, so that's why Cambridge fits in so nicely with what we've been doing here all the time as an IB school. So when we started this, when I started Cambridge, I introduced the Cambridge program in 2015. It fitted in quite quickly and quite nicely. And back then we started with 6 students, so we're now sitting with over 70 in the Cambridge program. So, but it does fit nicely. And just to talk about that, a Cambridge student in the AS program, remember I said that they treated as grade 11 students, and A-level students are treated as grade 12, as A2 students as we call them. They are placed in tutor groups with other grade 11 students in IEB and Cambridge. So we do try and integrate the students in IEB and Cambridge. So the Cambridge school is not separate. It's not on another campus or anything like that. The classes are between our other classes. Some of the IEB teachers also teach Cambridge, so the Cambridge students will be amongst the IEB students all the time. So we do try and integrate them as much as possible. So they play in the same sports teams, they're in the same tutor groups, they go to assembly together, they go to chapel together, they do all of those things. However, in the second year, there does tend to be a little split between the Cambridge students and the IEB students, and that's because of the nature of the work that the Cambridge students are doing. What I didn't mention earlier, which I'm going to mention now, which is the third point on this screen, is that the AS program in South Africa, this is only in South Africa, is regarded as being the equivalent to a grade 12 matric. So that first year, that AS year, a student who completes the correct number of subjects and gets the correct results in the first year is then treated as, by our universities, as having a matric qualification, which means that they can apply and go to a South African university. This does not apply internationally. It may apply to some universities in America, in the USA, but certainly not in the UK. Well, maybe one or two universities in Wales and Scotland would accept the AS, but the majority are looking for a full A level. Right. So the AS is regarded as being the equivalent to grade 12, but we treat them as grade 11 students. Now, why I was saying this was that when students go to A level, they are then doing work which is beyond grade 12. It's almost, and to a degree, it is definitely first year university work. So my A level students, when you see students getting top in the world in A level or top in country in A level, those students are doing first year university work. And what that does is it, first of all, sets them up to be able to apply to international universities, but it certainly sets them up for our local universities very, very well. In fact, so much so that our local universities in South Africa regard A-level students as being quite a catch, and they give extra points. So UCT, University of Cape Town, will give extra points to students who have A-levels. So for example, if you get an A in grade 12 IEB, you get 8 points for that subject. If you do the same thing in A level, you get an A in A level, you get 10 points. So they actually give you more points for your entry. Stellenbosch University, around the corner from us here, will regard a C at A level as being the equivalent to an A for university entry. So doing your A level certainly helps for getting into local universities, and it's a requirement for many international universities. Right. So that is, so while we try and integrate the IEB and Cambridge students, there is a slight split in the second year, but not so much so that we have two separate schools. The students still got the same matric dance, they have the same valedictory, everything else still works together. Right. Certainly the volume of work is much greater because of that whole A-level side of things. And that's where the difference really kicks in when you start comparing Cambridge to IEB. Right. Again, there I've said Cambridge program is an accelerated program because remember that we've got students coming in from grade 10 and doing AS in their grade 11 year. But that AS is seen as the equivalent to South African matric, which means effectively they are doing grade 11 and grade 12 in 1 year. That's what makes it, again, an accelerated program. So it, as the fourth point there states, it is not a soft option. Okay, definitely not a soft option. All right, I'm going to talk a little bit more about students who choose to do this, or why they would choose or why not. But please remember, it is not an easy option. People think because they can drop the number of subjects, it's going to be easier. No, that's not the case. Right, so students who choose to follow this route are going to be expected to work harder, more independently, be more focused and engaged. That's the beauty of the Cambridge classroom. The students who are in those classes are all focused. They all know where they're going, and they are all working very, very hard. There's a fair amount of competition, which is great, because they actually work with each other and collaborate to try and get everybody over the line at the end of the day. Right. So who joins the Cambridge program? As I just mentioned, so students who join the Cambridge program are those who are looking for a little bit more of a challenge at school and are ready to take the challenge on. I had to write that last little piece. There's a number of students tell me, oh, no, I'm not being challenged enough. I'm bored in class and I want something more. But then they get into Cambridge and then they're not prepared to do anymore. So if a student is feeling like they need to be challenged at school and they're feeling bored in their current IEB classes or wherever they are, some students from government schools around us as well doing CAPS, if they are feeling bored, great, come do the Cambridge program. But you need to then work harder than you've worked before. Right. Also, students are interested in keeping options of international study open. Now, I have to say at this point that our IEB, the grade 12 IEB, is accepted overseas. Okay. In UK universities and beyond, Edinburgh, for example, in Scotland, is quite happy to take IEB students. IEB will get you into the USA without a problem. Where the issues come in is students who want to go to Oxford or Cambridge or one of those top universities, one of the Russell Group universities. Cambridge and Oxford do want students to have done more like further studies or advanced programs. Okay, so if a student is looking to get into Oxford, Cambridge, Imperial, places like that, probably is the better idea to do Cambridge then in that case. Okay, if you're looking to go to Holland, Holland seems to be a big choice at the moment, then they're going to want at Cambridge. Okay, and they're going to want 6 subjects at Cambridge on the Cambridge level. Not 6 subjects at A level, just 6 subjects across the board, 3 subjects at A level. Right. So looking to go study internationally, Cambridge is obviously going to help you. And there are, as I've said, IEB, you can get into universities, but anecdotal evidence that I've received from various families over the last 10 years is that their children have gone to, say, the UK, to a UK university like Bath or York or something like that. They've gone there with IEB, and when they're sitting in the first year lectures with their grade 12 IEB, they are sitting alongside students from the UK who have done their A-levels. And the A-level is higher than our grade 12. So those grade 12 students who have gone over to the UK have had to work very hard during their first year at university to catch up, to make sure that the same level with the A-level, because remember, the lecturers there are going to be lecturing and assuming that everybody there is at an A-level. Right. Whereas if you come here and you do your Cambridge A-level here, you're going to work very, very hard to get the A-level, but you're going to do it with support of teachers and family and everybody around you, and then go to university on the same footing as everybody else. So some people prefer one route, other people prefer the second route. Okay, and it's entirely open to the families to make that choice. And I'm very happy to have meetings with individual families to discuss the various options that are available. Right. Students who join Cambridge normally have a very good idea where they're going or what they want to go do. Because if you're narrowing things down to 3 subjects at the end of A-level, it sort of stands to reason that you're narrowing your choices down. Okay, so if you, for example, you want to go to engineering, then you're going to do maths, physics, and chemistry. Okay, but if you don't know what you want to do, then doing only 3 subjects may limit your choices afterwards. So students who do Cambridge normally have a very good idea of where they want to go. We can, with doing the subjects at AS, at 4 or 5 subjects there, maybe even 6, we can sometimes create a bit of a broader base to allow students to make choices from that point on. But remember, that then does require quite a lot of effort in that first year. And then the other people who join our Cambridge program, well, those are joining us from other international schools where they've done GCSE or IGCSE, and it's a natural progression to go into Cambridge AS because GCSE is the year before the AS. Okay, so we have a number of international students coming over joining us, and they do very well because they've been in the Cambridge program. They know the system. They know how classes are taught. However, I must state at this point that there's a big jump between the IGCSE or the GCSE and AS. Right, so students coming from schools where they've done a GCSE or an IGCSE certificate or school leaving year or exams, they must realize it's not just a straight progression. There is a big jump into AS, because remember that AS is the first year of the advanced level program. It's called the advanced level for a reason. And students are generally required to work a lot harder going from GCSE to AS. Right. We have actually found over the last 10 years that my grade 10 students are often better prepared for AS than GCSE students from certain schools. So generally schools, we've got some schools in the UK, for example, which are generally fine, but we've got some other schools around the world who tend to teach to the exam, and they don't always teach the students to think. And I need students who are able to think independently in the AS program. Right, okay. Then why you should not follow the Cambridge program. Okay, this is generally the thing. Okay, right. So first of all, people think if they've done Cambridge, they can go study overseas. That is not true. You still have to get the results. So for example, I've said to you, if you want to go study in Holland, you've got to have 6 Cambridge subjects. 3 of them must be at A level. Those 3 need to be A's or B's. If you get a C for one of your A-level subjects, the top Dutch universities will not look at you. Okay, so it's not enough to say, I've done Cambridge. You still have to get good results. Right, so that's the first thing. Secondly, any student who thinks it's going to be easy because they think they can drop life orientation, or they can drop Afrikaans, or they can drop these other subjects that they may not enjoy, and then they think it's going to be easy, that's not going to be the reason to do this. Please, nobody should follow the Cambridge program because they think it's going to be easier. They've got to follow the Cambridge program because they know it's going to be more difficult and challenging. Right. So as I've said there, some students think doing fewer subjects will make it easier. Not true. If you're a student who suffers from examination anxiety, then Cambridge should be something you really need to think about carefully. And the reason for that is that when we write those exams at the end of the year, October, November, that's the only mark that applies to your final result. There is no year mark. So currently for international people here in South Africa in grade 12, 25% of your final result in grade 12 is made up of a continuous assessment mark, essentially a year mark. So that's 1/4 of your final result is made up of what you do during the year. In Cambridge, there is no year mark. Everything is based on those exams that you write at the end of the year. That's it. So in English, as I said, at the end of the AS year, you'll write 2 exam papers. At the end of the A level, you'll write another 2. Those are your results. There's no year mark. What you do during the tests that we write during the term, which we do, there are assessments all the way through the term. We issue reports, we do all those things. But the final result on your certificate is based on those exams. So if you study or if you suffer from exam anxiety, then you really need to think long and hard about whether this is the choice for you. All right. Yeah. Because I have had students in the past who work very well during the year, and they get to the final exams and they really battle and really struggle through those exams. Okay. Right. And what makes a successful student? Well, somebody who has got a goal in mind. They know why they're doing it. They're focused on achieving the goal. Notice it's not for parents to choose this route. Okay, I have had cases in the past where I've had parents tell their children that they will do Cambridge because they want them to go study overseas, and the children have really, really battled this, because at the end of the day, it's up to the student to make the choice, because they're the one that's going to put the work in. They're the ones who are going to be crying somewhere through the year and going on about why this is so difficult and why am I doing this. And what I tell every student in those individual interviews is that they have to know why they want to do this. And in fact, I get them to write on a piece of paper the reason why they want to follow the Cambridge program, particularly for our grade 10 students who are busy with IEB and who can carry on with grade 11 and grade 12 IEB and finish with a perfectly good grade 12 and go on to a local university and possibly an international university. Okay. I get them to write on a big piece of paper the reason why they're doing this. I put it up on their wall, because around about this time in May, June, end of May, beginning of June, in the AS program, this is where students really, really start to feel the pressure. And this is where whatever they've written on that page and put up on their wall needs to be good enough to pull them through. Okay, it is difficult, it is tough, and they are going to battle. And the ones who make it through and do very, very well and go on to universities and do some amazing things, those are the ones who can dig in, dig deep, and push through. Okay, so the reason for doing this needs to be that good. All right. They must be prepared to work independently outside the class, because the teachers aren't going to chase them up. They're not going to go follow them after school and make sure that they're doing their reading and their research in the library and stuff. That student needs to be self-motivated, and they need to be able to do that on their own. Right. The more they do that, the better, the easier it becomes. The students who battle are those people who don't do the reading outside of class. They need to be engaged. They need to be prepared to speak in class. They can't sit at the back of the class like a wallflower and expect all this information to soak into them. They have to be involved in class. That means they have to be offering their opinions, giving answers, discussing their theories, asking questions. My favorite thing in my class is when a student has gone and done some research and reading and come back to me the next morning and said, I read this and they say that and you said this. What's the difference and why? Can you explain that to me? I get so excited when I get that, because then I know the student's been doing that reading and they're coming with questions and they're asking. And every time they do that, that just enhances their understanding, but it also enhances the understanding of their peers, because then their peers are listening. And that's very, very important. Right. And then students need to be able to prioritize, deal with pressure, take responsibility for their studies. It's not for their parents to study for them. They have to do that. They need to remain focused for the entire year. Right. What some students in grade 12 do is they go, oh, I'll take a break during grade 11 and I'll really push during grade 12, or the other way around. I'll really work in grade 11 and I'll slack off in grade 12. In Cambridge, you can't do that, because your exams at the end of the first year count exactly half of your final mark, and the exams at the end of the second year count the other half. So you can't slack off for one of the years. You have to remain focused and push all the way through both. Right. But having said that, once you come out of that A level at the end of the day, it is amazing. We have some fantastic students. If I see the growth in our students from the beginning of AS to the end of A level, it is amazing. These students are able to speak with confidence. They engage. They use language that I don't understand sometimes, because they've learned some amazing things in different subjects. And these guys go on, and if they go to local universities, they absolutely fly. That's why our universities love A-level students, because they finish their degree in the required length of time, and they're on the Dean's Merit List most years. So, so our Cambridge students are really, really well prepared for our universities, and obviously then for international. So if I look at the number of students that we've got studying around the world, we've got people at Oxford, I've got people at Imperial, we've got people all over in Holland, America, in all different universities around the world, who have gone to some of the top universities, and they've done very, very well. Just a matter of interest, I didn't mention it just now, for international universities or American universities, if you do your A-level, some universities, and when I say some, I mean universities like Harvard and Yale, Princeton, those places, will give a student up to a year's credit for having done A-level. So we've had students here who have done A-level and they've started in second year at Yale, for example. Right. So so the Cambridge program, the Cambridge A-level, is very, very well regarded around the world. Right. So let's just talk about university access, but in particular South African universities. So this would apply to everybody, whether you're an international student or not. Okay, to go to a South African university, you need something called a matriculation exemption certificate, or a university exemption certificate. And this certificate is issued by something called USAF, which is University of South Africa. And when they get your results, so you send your certificates in, they will issue the certificate, and the costs approximately 800 Rand. I think it's going up now a little bit. It'll be probably about 1,000 Rand in years to come. Right. So there are certain rules to get into a South African university. And the first one is that you need to have 5 subjects on Cambridge, at least 4 of them at AS level and 1 at GCSE. Okay, so GCSE, remember, is the year prior to AS. So what we do for our local students is they generally write Afrikaans at the end of their grade 10. And they get that as an IGCSE, and that ticks that box. And then they do their 4 or 5 AS levels the following year. Right. So that's the first way of getting into university here. It's with 5 subjects. If you come with the GCSE from an international school and you've already got a GCSE, then you already tick the box for the 1 GCSE, and then you do 4 AS level subjects here. I must say at this point that our universities here in South Africa, if you're going to study a BSc of any kind, so Bachelor of Science degree, whether it be a BSc in computers, BSc engineering, BSc maths, they're going to want both physics and chemistry to apply to university. Now, you can very well ask, what do you need chemistry for if you're going to be doing computer science? But the thing is that in South Africa, the grade 12, that IEB or CAPS grade 12, the National Senior Certificate, science is taught as one subject, with both physics and chemistry taught as one subject. And so our universities want to be able to compare a student from an IEB school with a Cambridge student, and that's why they want the Cambridge student to have both physics and chemistry, at least for the first year. So that's something which is very important to remember. If your child is looking to do any science subject, any BSc at a South African university, they have to offer both physics and chemistry in the first year. Now, the other thing about our universities here, if you're going to Stellenbosch, they will generally be happy with 5 subjects. However, UCT have got some faculties where they want 6 subjects. So this is why we have the individual meetings with the family, so people can tell me what they want to do, so we can try and advise accordingly. So if you go apply for medicine at UCT, 5 subjects on Cambridge is good enough. If you apply for economics faculty, you need to have 6 subjects. If you apply to do a BA, you need to have 6 subjects. Right. So if you want to go do engineering, you only need 5 subjects. So I'm not entirely sure why UCT has introduced that, but there you go. So we need to make sure we jump through the hoops to try and get students into these various universities. That's why it's important to have those individual meetings. Right. Having said that, both Stellenbosch and UCT and every other South African university will be very happy with somebody having done their A-levels. However, I must state that there are some universities in South Africa who are not quite at a level where they understand what A-levels are. So if you go to some of the lesser known universities in South Africa, they won't have a clue what Cambridge is. So those universities that really know what Cambridge A-levels are would be UCT, Stellenbosch, Wits, Pretoria. Those are probably the 4 main ones. If you get in there, they know what they're talking about, and they will be able to help you out. The other universities may need a little bit more interaction to try and tell them what you have in terms of an A-level. Right. Although they are getting better, Cambridge is doing a lot of work with their recognitions department to make sure that all the universities are up to scratch with Cambridge qualifications. Right. Then the language issues, this always comes up. So for those of you who don't know, in South Africa, a student is expected to offer 2 languages, South African languages, generally English and 1 other language. So in South Africa, or in the Western Cape, where we are based in Cape Town, a student here would be expected to offer English and then either Afrikaans or isiXhosa. Okay. However, if you apply with a Cambridge qualification, you don't have to have the other South African language. English plus 1 other language is good enough, and there's a whole host of languages. So French, Spanish, Portuguese, Mandarin, there's a whole host of languages, which we don't teach, but you are able to write those exams if you come from a school where you've done that. So for example, students who have done French or something in country where I've got students, for example, from Mozambique who do Portuguese, English and Portuguese, so they're going to write Portuguese on the GCSE level, and that's how they tick that box. However, if you don't offer 2 languages, you can still get an exemption. It's just something called a conditional exemption, and that is something that I can talk to you about in those individual meetings. So this is what I was saying just now when I said there is so much flexibility, but it does require that we talk individually and go through that. Right. For a matric exemption, I mean, I'm not going to go through all this detail. This is what we'll do in the meetings, but this is the guidelines from USAF, University of South Africa, which tells you how you can get matriculation exemption. And then the subjects on the right hand side are the recognized subjects, and you'll see that the ones in the blue blocks are the ones that we offer here at Somerset College. So English language, Afrikaans, biology, chemistry, mathematics, physics, art, design, geography, history, music, computer science, and then further mathematics. Right, that Afrikaans is we don't teach Afrikaans lessons, we just write the IGCSE Afrikaans exam at the end of the day. Just to talk to you quickly about further mathematics, this subject over here, there is no university in the world that requires further mathematics as a subject, but that is a subject that is very, very popular with some of my top A-level students, because it's crazy maths. It's beyond A-level maths. And so the students who do it are very, very motivated and very proud of their maths nerd status, I think. But they really love doing that. Right. This is just to show you. Remember, I mentioned to you just now that some of our universities will regard Cambridge in a higher level. So if you have a look, so this is a percentage awarded by Stellenbosch University. So a South African NSC, National Senior Certificate, a student getting between 80 and 100%, they will be viewed by Stellenbosch as having got 80% for university entry. But you can see if you get a C on the A level, that is regarded as being the equivalent mark. So this is why doing your A level certainly does help you. If you go all the way up to get an A star, by the way, an A star at A level means that you achieve 90% or more in that subject, then you are classed as having got 95% by Stellenbosch University, which then means obviously puts you in a better position for entry into that university. Right, so this is why the A level does help you in getting into local universities as well as international. Right, for international university access, that matriculation exemption is not required. So you can have different number of subjects, okay, but different universities have different requirements. And it's important that anybody who comes to us who's looking to go to international universities has an idea of where they want to go. Because the first thing I'm going to say is contact that university and find out exactly what they require. So, for example, I had a student here a couple of years ago, 2024. She finished here with an excellent A level, but one of her A level subjects was art, and she tried to go to Switzerland. And Switzerland said, well, sorry, we don't regard art as being an academic subject. So they saw her as only having 2 A levels and would not accept her. So she needed to do another year, and she picked up another subject, did an A level there. She's currently now studying at Lausanne in Switzerland. But these are the things that we need to take into account. That it turns out a number of European universities do not regard art and design as being an academic subject, and they will not recognize it as an A level. Okay, but we do offer it as a subject because it is recognized here in South Africa and in many other universities. It's just in Europe they seem to have an issue with it. Right, so that's why it's important for students to contact the universities that they're interested in going to and finding out exactly what they require, and then we can talk about what we can offer to get you there. Right, as I say, I have got students sitting in Oxford at this very moment in time. My latest student there is Josh. Josh is just finishing off his first year at Oxford now as we speak, and doing very, very nicely. So we've got students all over the world. So they do get into these international universities, but they have to be getting the results at the end of the day. Right, remembering, with that in mind, I get a number of students coming to me saying, oh, I want to do the Cambridge program because I want to go study overseas. And then I just see the parents' faces drop because the prices overseas are exorbitant. You're looking at almost, well, not almost, but over R1 million a year to go study at some universities around the world. Right. Having said that, apparently in Germany, you can study for free because they are trying to get more educated youth people into the country, or young people into the country. And so you can go study for free, but you've just got to learn German and then go work for a German company afterwards, apparently. But there are a number of options around the world. Okay, I've spoken about the subjects that we offer. Just a quick thing, just to make sure we're all on the same page. So English language is generally required. There are some degrees that may not require English language, but we try and get all our AS students to do English language. English literature is not accepted as a university entry subject here in South Africa. So if you do English literature, that's great. You still need to do other subjects to make sure you get the correct number. It doesn't count as one of the 4. All right, it's a great subject, however, for going to the US. If you're looking to go to the USA, they love English literature. So that would be really good. Students who come in and do mathematics, notice that we do you need to write 4 exams to get mathematics. All my AS students, the first year students, do pure maths and stats in their first year. And in the second year, they do pure maths, and then they have a choice of doing stats 2 or mechanics. The students who follow the stats route in the second year are generally the students looking to go to actuarial science or something along the economics line. Okay, the students who do mechanics are generally those students who are looking to go to engineering or physics degrees or something along those lines. Right, then we have physics and chemistry, 2 separate subjects. It is not combined, as I mentioned just now. In IEB, it's combined into 1 subject, but it is 2 separate subjects in AS, and as a result, go a lot deeper into the curriculum and into the work, into the topics. Chemistry, I've got to say, is probably the worst subject in Cambridge in terms of difficulty and the amount of work that they need to get through. Okay, if anybody starts crying halfway through the year, it's because they are doing chemistry. Okay, but having said that, our chemistry results at the end of the year are way above the world averages every year. And so the big thing in chemistry is just to keep putting pressure on. Okay, right, biology, as we know, history, geography, computer science, economics. Okay, please note we don't do business. So some people ask for business. The reason why we choose economics and not business, economics is what they call a facilitating subject. It's one of the subjects that's going to get you into universities around the world. Business, while it's accepted by South African universities, is not seen as a tier 1 subject anywhere else in the world. Okay, so business is more of it's just learning, whereas economics is more of an essay writing subject and being able to argue points. Art is A-level only. It's a 2-year A-level course. So they started in the beginning of the AS year, but they only submit all their work at the end of the second year to get a full A-level, or they can submit all their work at the end of the second year to get an AS qualification, depending on how well they've done. Art is only practical. There is no theory component to art, so there's no written exam at all. But to do art, we need to have some kind of a portfolio. We need to have an idea that you can do art. Drawing little stick men like I would do is not going to get you into the art course. Music. Music is there as a subject. We only ever have 1 student a year doing music. And reason for that is not, I like playing my guitar around the fire at night music. This is, you actually need to compose your own pieces. Right, so you need to be able to compose music. Music needs to be your thing. Okay, it can't be, I like strumming on my guitar, banging on my drum. You have to live for music. You're looking to go into a career in music as a composer or something along those lines. Right, so my last student who did music, well, I've got one currently in A-level at the moment, but the last student who finished A-level ended up composing an amazing piece for 5 pianos to play together at the same time. It was a brilliant piece of work, but wow, did you have to work hard to get that right. Okay, and then further maths, which I mentioned just now, which we offer only in the second year as an A-level. And but as I say, that subject is not required by any university in the world. Even the Cambridge people that I've spoken to from Cambridge themselves don't quite know why they offer this subject, but it's probably because there are enough crazy people in this world who want to do it. Right, so those are the subjects that we offer. So I've spoken a little bit about the subject requirements already. So if I just quickly go through them to get a matriculation exemption. Okay, as I mentioned earlier, most universities in the UK accept 3 A-levels. However, if you're looking for a Cambridge and Oxford, you're probably looking for 4. Okay, 4 A-levels if you're looking to go to the top universities. Remembering that in the US, you can get credit, 6 months to a year's credit for having done A-levels. But remember, in the US, you've got more universities and you've also got a bigger range of universities. So there are universities all the way from community college up to Harvard, Yale, and different universities there will have different requirements. So if you're looking to go to the US as well, it's always a good idea just to check. So there are some universities in America that will even take you in with just GCSEs. And there are universities that will take you in just with AS. And there are other universities that will want you to have A-level. As I mentioned, for local universities, both AS Physics and AS Chemistry is required to study a BSc. If you want to go do a BCom or law or something like that, that's not required. It's only if you want to go do a BSc. Some local universities require 6 subjects for certain courses. So I've given you the example there. I've spoken about that. And then we're looking at doing an online bridging course at the beginning of the first term for chemistry, because as I mentioned, chemistry is such a fun subject. That's just to try and make sure everybody's on the same path, and we will look at doing that at the beginning in January of next year, 2026. Okay, but I'll talk more to people as we go through the individual interviews about that. Right, then just regarding costs, we don't have fees for next year, but please note, for local parents, for local families who may have debentures, we don't accept debentures in the Cambridge program. So you'd either have to sell your debentures or donate them or pass them on to another child if you got a younger one. The Cambridge fees for this year was 182,000 Rand. That includes all exams, everything, excluding any rewrites or remarks on your exams. All the practical costs are included. Boarding is not included, and textbooks and stationery are not included. But the textbooks are generally last for 2 years. So if you buy a textbook at the beginning of AS, so like the physics textbook lasts for 2 years, the chemistry textbook lasts for 2 years, and biology and those things. So yeah, a lot of the students at the moment are working. When it says they're stationary, a lot of my Cambridge students work on iPads and things like that at the moment. So they're taking their notes on iPads. So stationary becomes the cost of an iPad, which is not insignificant, but a lot of students are starting to work on that, and then they're working around that. So we don't have a preference. So if students want to write in books, or they want to write on folio paper and then file it at home, or they want to do all their notes on an iPad, that's perfectly fine. We go with whatever. In Cambridge, we're not very specific in that regard, because we want students to be comfortable in working in the manner that suits them. Because remember, at the end of the day, the Cambridge student needs to take responsibility for their studies. And if they're going to take responsibility for their studies, they need to take responsibility for everything, which includes the way they take their notes and the way they do their filing and everything that they're going to do there. Right. So where to now? Okay, if you are a local student, then, and this is what you want to do, or your family, local family, then you can speak to our admissions department and to make an appointment, and we'll meet one-on-one. If current grade 10 students, I did send out a letter earlier, a couple of weeks ago, about the option of writing the GCSE Afrikaans exams in October this year. We're doing those registrations now in the beginning of the 3rd term. So if you are interested in doing that, then we can do that. If you write the Afrikaans exam, that does not make you commit to doing Cambridge. You can write the Afrikaans exam and still decide not to do Afrikaans. What you cannot do is write the Cambridge exam and then try and make it replace IEB Afrikaans. That doesn't work. Okay. So if a student continues in grade 11 and grade 12, they still have to do IEB Afrikaans. Writing the Cambridge exam is not going to replace that. Right, then any student who's looking to do Cambridge next year, I suggest that they work very hard now in grade 10, because obviously, as you know, AS, as I've mentioned, is an accelerated year. It makes it easier if they've got a strong foundation to work from. I don't want students to sit and go, well, I'm going to do Cambridge next year, so I don't have to worry about grade 10. Okay, they need to make sure their foundation is strong. And what they should be aiming at is at least 70% in maths, at least 70% in physical science, if they're going to go into the sciences. And then if they are doing, well, it says their advanced program maths, I still have the word advanced for international students, but in South Africa now we call it further studies in mathematics. So that's always a good idea if people are doing that. Right, so I see I've got a question here about writing German second language on GCSE. Yes, that does count. You'll remember I said to you there's a whole lot of options in place of Afrikaans, and German is certainly one of those. Right, okay, let's just go on. I think we finished that for international students. Please do contact our Somerset College admissions people. They will make an appointment for you to meet with me. I'm happy to meet online. and go through everything that you need. Again, it's all about meeting and making sure that every family who's got different requirements come in, and we try and make things work for you. We've got a very, very flexible program. I haven't yet been able to not help people in different things. I've had students come to us with American education and South African education and English education all in their history and still carry on and finish their Cambridge. So yeah, okay. So it's important that we talk and we make sure that we have everything in place. And I know where you're trying to go at the end of the day. Right, then I've got a big sign at the back of my classroom that says, remember your why. It fills the whole wall. And remember what I said to you, I try and get every student to write on a piece of paper why they're going to do this. And that is the most important thing. They need to remember why they're choosing this option. If they come in from another international school or from the UK or anything like that, the why is generally a little bit easier. If you're currently in grade 10, your why needs to be quite strong, because you can just carry on with the IEB and do a perfectly good grade 11 and grade 12 in IEB. Right, I see we've got some questions coming through. Before I start answering any questions, because I'm done at this point, you'll see I've got up there the email address for our admissions department, and our website is there. So if you want to speak to me or you want to set up a meeting to meet me, please do email admissions.